President Muhammadu Buhari on Wednesday, December 19th, presented the 2019 appropriation bill before the National Assembly. He proposed a budget of 8.83 trillion. The proposal showed that about a quarter of the sum, about 2.14 trillion, would be used for debt servicing, while capital expenditure is expected to go up 2.03 trillion. Now, all of this, of course, to some people may be jargon. But to make some sense out of it all, it's my pleasure to welcome an economist, Mr. Michael Adeleye. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too. And from our Abuja studio, we have Mr. Paul Alaje, who's also an economist. Good morning, Paul.
Okay, Paul is not ready yet.
He's not ready. We expect Tilewa Adebajo, also an economist, to join us in the course of this segment. But we have Mr. Adeleye with us, so let's just get on with it. Now, let's forget all the stuff that surrounded that event and look at the budget itself.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts about an 8 trillion naira budget?
Thank you very much. When the budget came out, and the first thing that I noticed was it was lower than the last budget. And in spite of the crisis, economic crisis, domestic crisis, educational crisis, labor crisis, I would have expected.
Okay, Michael, just hold on 1 second. I need to ask Alera a question. We'll get back to you to continue that thing. Alera, you.
Am I the guest on this program?
No, I'm turning you into a guest right now. I mean,
okay.
It's Christmas. I know you said you didn't want to talk about the budget. It's Christmas, and there are people who are concerned that we need to even, how do you say it now? Even celebrate this season on a budget.
I'd say, here. There isn't too much money around, so we have to harness the little money that is available.
So if individuals can be thinking about celebrating the season on a budget, why is it so difficult for us to understand when the nation needs to run on a budget?
Run on a budget?
Yeah.
No, we understand that, but the issue is that most people complain that the budget is not really implemented like it should.
But your individual budgets are implemented as they should.
Well, you know, that one is what you have in your pocket. Government doesn't have to spend money that is in its pocket. It can borrow, it can tax you.
But these days, individuals can borrow as well.
Which bank is going to give you loan?
I'll tell you about that when we bring back Adeleye after this break.
At about 12:42 p.m., President Muhammadu Buhari walks into the Green Chamber. He's here to present the 2019 appropriation bill to a joint session of the National Assembly. As he makes his way to his assigned seat, he is greeted by cheers, chants, protest songs and boos by lawmakers, with each side trying to outshout the other. This is the first time a president will be presenting a budget to an opposition-led National Assembly since the return of democracy in 1999. There were early indications that it would not be business as usual, as some lawmakers in the House of Representatives had earlier threatened to boycott the budget presentation. The Speaker had to plead with his colleagues in a closed-door session. Some lawmakers are, however, determined to express their feelings. In his presentation, President Buhari touches on insurgency, the farmers' herders' crisis, fight against corruption and many more. But he is interrupted at intervals.
May I appeal to the honorable members that the world is watching us. And we are supposed
No, it's not true.
We are supposed to be above this.
Amidst the rowdy session and charged atmosphere, the president spoke on under-recovery or subsidy in the oil sector and his plans for implementation of the national minimum wage.
Let me say something about minimum wage issue. I am committed to addressing the issue of a minimum wage, and I will be sending a bill to you, the National Assembly, on this. However, in order to avoid a fiscal crisis for the federal government, as well as the state, it is important to devise ways to ensure that its implementation does not lead to an increase in the level of borrowing. I am accordingly setting up a high-powered technical committee to advise on ways of funding an increase in the minimum wage and the attendant wage adjustments without having to resort to additional borrowings.
He also talks at length on the performance of the 2018 budget, as well as numerous projects and programs of his administration.
Priority projects such as the Abuja, Kaduna, Kano Highway, as well as second Niger Bridge, are well underway.
Where is the second Niger Bridge? Where?
Some of the key allocations are to the Ministry of Interior, Defense, Education and Health. He said his government plans to increase broadband penetration in all the 774 local government areas in the country. There is also allocation for the amnesty program in the South-South, as well as take-off grant for Northeast Development Commission. He then lays the 2019 budget estimate. From then, there was no coming down for those for or against. After about 5 minutes, the president had to leave without the speaker making his remarks. With some members raising placards and others snatching and tearing them, the 2019 budget presentation will go down in history as remarkable, where partisan loyalty played a dominating role and potentially further widening the gap between lawmakers themselves on the one hand and the legislature and the executive on the other. From Abuja, Ibrahim Adra, reporting for Channels Television News.
Welcome back. So, Larry, I was going to tell you about a bank that can give you a loan at, with no collateral or at the interest rate's relatively low. I mean, they're all over the place. They'll tell you they'll give you 4%. By the time they are done, sometimes you wonder if it's actually 4% or if it's like 32% they're giving you. But anyway, Michael Adule.
Of course, these banks shall remain unnamed.
No, we're not naming anybody before marketing comes to see us. So, Michael, you were talking about the budget. And do you think it reflects the state of the nation? Yes, you were saying that, yes, it's decreased from what it was for 2018.
But, I mean, like I said earlier, I mean, I would have expected the budget to be a little bit higher than what it was last year. Because last year, we didn't have most of this crisis that we're having now that happened last year, except intermittence of the Boko Haram crisis. But this year, we had this labor crisis, we have this university polytechnic crisis, we had the health sector crisis, and all these boil down to finance, boil down to unpaid salaries, boil down to lack of infrastructure, or dilapidated infrastructures, and so on and so forth. So I would have expected the budget to a little bit more higher. If we look at our health sector, for example, I mean, that one goes up a little bit. I think that one's about 4%, okay? And then we have the education sector, about 70%. These two sectors should be more, I believe, should be more concentrated on with a higher budget, because that's where we have the majority of the crisis.
Well, Mr. Adele, if you're talking about a budget that's higher than this, financing the budget is already an issue, even with this figure that we're talking about. Where would you expect us to get the money to finance it?
Well, last year, if you look at the rates of, or the price of the oil, it was really down. than what it is now. And we still have about 9 trillion for the budget last year. I mean, this year, we've had it a little bit about up to around about $70 per barrel, a little bit higher than that. And up till now, it's still around about between 50 and 60 something. Now, which means it still tells you that we still have more money coming in. And also, don't forget about all the funds, the looted funds that came in, that they're actually still recovering up to now. All this money is somewhere, right? So obviously, those money should be put into use as well. So